My wife, Clara, and I inherited Blackfield Farm from a great uncle I barely remembered, some distant, grim-faced relation who died without a will, leaving us nothing but this rotting husk of a house and the blighted land surrounding it. The lawyer's letter had called it a fixer-upper with potential, but when we arrived, the place looked like something out of a nightmare. Peeling paint curled like dead skin from the walls. The sagging porch groaned under our weight like a dying breath. And beyond it, the field stretched out too far, too quiet, as if the earth itself was holding its breath, waiting. The air smelled of damp rot and something older, something buried deep, something that, in the weeks to come, would wake beneath our feet and whisper to us in the dark. The first night, we laughed off the drafts that snuffed our candles mid-breath and the distant scratching in the walls, a sound like fingernails dragging across splintered wood. "Old houses settle," Clara said, her voice too loud in the thick silence, but the unease lingered like a held breath. Then came dawn, and with it the slow horror of waking, not in bed, but knee-deep in the field, barefoot and shivering, my hands caked in black dirt, nails split and bleeding, as if I'd spent the night clawing at the earth. The worst part, I didn't remember walking there, and the soil beneath me didn't feel empty, it felt watched. Near the gnarled oak at the field's edge lay a patch of earth unlike the rest, barren, lifeless, its gray soil packed tight as a grave. No weeds pierced its surface, no insects crawled through its dust, just an awful stillness that made my skin prickle, with the certainty that something beneath was watching me back. I'd lose hours staring at it, my thoughts slipping away like water through cracks, until one night Clara woke to find me kneeling there, fingers raw and bleeding, clawing at the dirt like a man digging his own way out of a coffin. My lips moved, but the voice that spilled out wasn't mine. It was a chorus, guttural and layered, whispering words that turned her blood to ice. Clara tore through the farm's old ledgers, her hands shaking as she uncovered the truth. Offerings, bindings the weak fed to the soil. The diary spoke of rituals, of sacrifices buried alive to keep the land fertile. And then one sleepless night, she heard them too, voices slithering up from the earth, from the walls, from my mouth when I didn't know she was listening. "Help us," they begged, "she's fresh." They hissed, and worst of all, whispered with a terrible, hungry certainty, "He's almost ready." There in my head when I sleep, I told Clara, my voice cracking like dry earth. But the truth was worse. They weren't just in my head anymore. By day, I moved through the house like a ghost myself, hollow-eyed and trembling, my hands twitching with the memory of digging. By night the voices swarmed louder, a cacophony of pleas and demands that slithered through my skull, until I no longer knew where they ended and I began. Clara found me at dawn, kneeling in that cursed patch, my fingers shredded and caked with blood, chanting words that tasted of rot and old bones, a language I didn't know, but my body remembered, as if the soil itself had taught me in my sleep. The diaries confirmed our worst fears. The barren patch wasn't just dead earth, but a mass grave where generations of the unworthy had been buried alive. The sick who couldn't work, the elderly who became burdens, the unwanted souls sacrificed to keep the soil fertile. Now they're trapped, starving spirits writhed beneath us, and they hungered for a new offering to break their curse. Clara's hands trembled as she turned the final page, her breath catching at the faded, desperate scrawl that sealed our fate. "The land always takes its due." The words seemed to slither off the page, wrapping around us like the roots of some ancient, hungry thing waiting beneath our feet. "They want you," I whispered, except the voice wasn't mine anymore, just a hollow vessel for the hungry dead who'd rooted themselves in my bones. They showed me visions in flickers, the soil darkening like a fresh wound after rain, the way the wheat grew tallest where the old graves bled, and worst of all how Clara, soft, unbroken, fertile Clara, would make the perfect offering. Then came the night I woke with the kitchen knife already in my grip, looming over her sleeping form, as the voices shrieked in giddy anticipation, only to find her eyes wide open in the moonlight, her fingers clenched around the iron fireplace poker she'd hidden under the sheets, her voice steady as she uttered the words I'd taught her from the diary. "You don't own him. Fight them," Clara begged, thrusting the diary into my shaking hands, her eyes wild with terror and resolve. "Or I run." The spirits wailed as I staggered toward the cursed patch, the knife trembling in my grip, not toward Clara now, but my own wrist, because the land demanded blood for blood, a life for a life. Then Clara's voice sliced through the howling void. "They don't own you." And with a scream that tore from my very soul, I drove the blade deep into the hungry earth instead. The ground erupted in an unearthly shriek that shook the farmhouse to its foundations, leaving us clutching each other in the sudden silence. But though the patch lies quiet now, and the whispers have faded, we both know the truth. The soil is still waiting, still starving, and sometimes at night, when the wind dies and the world holds its breath, I still feel them writhing beneath my skin, patient as roots, waiting for their due. My name is Adam. Me and my boys, Jake, Ryan, Mark, and Tyler, had been planning this weekend getaway for months, desperate to escape the city grind. When we finally hit the road that Friday afternoon, windows down and music blasting, it felt like the start of something perfect. The further we drove, the more the concrete jungle melted away, replaced by rolling hills and golden fields. We laughed like idiots, passing around snacks and shit-talking each other's music choices. By the time we pulled up to that old farmhouse, the sunset was painting the sky in oranges and purples, and for a moment everything felt peaceful, just 5 friends, miles from anywhere, with nothing but time and cold beers ahead of us. The air smelled like earth in summer, and as we unloaded the car, joking about ghost stories and bad horror movies, I remember thinking, this is exactly what we needed. But that was before the cornfields, before the silence, before we realized why the land felt so calm. It wasn't peaceful, it was waiting. Ryan was the first to act weird. Typical Ryan. Instead of using the damn bathroom like a civilized person, he decided to piss in the cornfield after midnight. When he came back, something was off. His usual loudmouth energy was gone. His voice came out flat, like a recording, and when he smiled, it didn't touch his dead eyes. He just stood at the living room window for hours, staring at those endless rows of corn, like they were whispering secrets to him. The next morning, Jake found him in the kitchen, shucking ears of corn with his bare hands, hard, frantic jerks that left his fingers shredded and bleeding. "Gotta tend the rows," Ryan muttered, his voice hollow, like someone had scraped out his personality and left the words behind. Jake laughed it off, calling him a sleep-deprived idiot or maybe high. But I got close enough to see Ryan's eyes up close. They weren't just blank, they were empty, like whatever made him Ryan had been scooped out, and something else was peering through the holes left behind. By day 2, Mark and Tyler went exploring in the corn, because apparently no horror movie warning ever sticks with these idiots. And when they came back, they were wrong. Their movements were perfectly synced. Same stiff steps, same unnatural pauses, like puppets controlled by the same sick bastard. At dinner, all 3 of them, Ryan included, sat in dead silence, chewing in slow, mechanical bites, their eyes fixed on nothing, until in perfect unison they turned to me and Jake and monotone droned, "You should join the rows." Jake lost it, hurling a beer bottle at the wall and screaming at them to cut the shit. But they didn't even blink, just stood up in one fluid motion, walked outside, and disappeared into the corn, leaving us listening to the rustling and whispering all night. Not to us, never to us, but to the fields, like they were reporting back to something older and hungrier than any of us. Jake and I finally pried open that goddamn basement door, the crosses screeching as we tore them free, and what we found down there punched the air from my lungs. Yellowed newspaper clippings about migrant workers who died in these fields decades ago. Heat stroke, dehydration, some just vanished into thin air, their bodies dumped in unmarked graves where the corn now grew thickest. But the ledger, Christ, the ledger was worse. Page after page of names, dates, and that same phrase scrawled like a sick prayer. The harvest takes them back. That's when it hit us. This wasn't a haunting, it was a harvest. Those workers weren't seeking revenge. They were recruiting, pulling us into their endless, hungry chorus. Jake's hands shook as he grabbed my arm, his voice a raw whisper. "Adam." Ryan wasn't breathing when he came back from the corn last night. Jake and I made a break for it at dawn, but the corn had other plans. The stalks twisted like living things, weaving together to block the road. Then we saw them, Ryan, Mark, and Tyler standing motionless in the field, arms outstretched like scarecrows, their hollow voices whispering, joined the rows in eerie unison. Except it wasn't just them anymore. It was hundreds of voices, layered together in a chorus of the long dead. Jake screamed and lunged into the corn. For a few seconds, I heard him thrashing, fighting until the field fell silent. And then the singing began, a low, mournful work song in a language I didn't recognize. Now it's night again, and I'm barricaded in the farmhouse, listening to the doorknob rattle. They're out there, all of them, and the corn keeps whispering my name, softer now like it already knows. I press my back against the wall, my breath ragged, the whispers grow louder, closer, the door groans against its hinges. I shut my eyes. I think I'm supposed to take root. I took the seasonal job at Holloway Farm for the quiet. At first, it was exactly what I needed. Golden fields stretching to the horizon, the earthy smell of soil after rain, an old man, Holloway, paying cash under the table. But something felt off from the start. The harvest was too abundant, the crops almost grotesquely large. The farmhand before me had quit suddenly, leaving only a rusted pocket knife and a diary with the words, "It eats while you sleep," scrawled on the last page. The barn loft where I slept smelled sweetly rotten, like fermenting grain, and the silence. Christ, the field should have been alive with insects, but all I heard was the occasional creak of the barn wood, like something was shifting its weight beneath me at night. Eli, the other farmhand, was the first to act strange. He'd always been quiet, but then he stopped speaking altogether, started waking at dusk, his skin sallow, his lips cracked like dry soil. I caught him one midnight kneeling in the field, shoving fistfuls of raw carrots into his mouth, dirt and all. When I shouted, he turned slowly. His eyes were black from lid to lid, just for a second, before he blinked and they were normal again. "Ain't right to let the harvest go to waste," he whispered, and his breath smelled like turned earth. That's when the nightmares started. Dreams of sinking into grain bins, of roots threading through my ribs. I'd wake gasping, my sheets damp with sweat that reeked of fertilizer. The crops near Eli's bunk began withering overnight, stalks collapsing into gray sludge. Animals avoided him. The farm dog whined and pissed itself when he walked by. Old man Holloway found me vomiting behind the tractor one morning, after Eli brushed past me in the pre-dawn dark. "You feel it too, don'tcha?" Holloway muttered, his hands shaking as he lit a cigarette. "That boy ain't Eli no more. Something's wearing him." That night, I heard Eli sobbing in the loft, begging between wet, gnawing sounds, "Please, please, I don't want to be hungry no more." But when I climbed the ladder, all I found were piles of half-eaten turnips, their flesh riddled with teeth, marks too sharp to be human. I broke into Holloway's office and found the old farm ledgers, pages and pages of harvest records, except every 10 years. The yield spiked unnaturally, followed by a single underlined entry, "Vessel chosen." The last was dated a decade ago, next to a name I didn't recognize. Beneath it, scribbled in shaky script, "The old god takes its tithe in sweat and screams. It eats through us." That's when I understood. The thing in Eli wasn't possessing him. It was digesting him. And the better the harvest, the hungrier it got. I tried to run at dawn. Eli stood between me and the gate, his mouth smeared with something dark. "Stay," he crooned, but it wasn't his voice. It was layered, ancient, the sound of 1,000 rustling stalks. The fields around us groaned, the earth splitting as roots slithered up like skeletal fingers. I swung my shovel at his head. It connected with a wet crunch, but Eli just laughed. His neck kinked at a broken angle. "You'll understand when you're empty enough," he gurgled. I bolted past him, tires spitting gravel as I fled. In the rearview mirror, I saw Holloway standing in the field, arms raised to the sky like a preacher. The corn was swaying now, dancing, and Eli was walking toward the house, where the new seasonal worker's truck was parked. I should warn him, I should go back, but the radio just crackled with grain static, and my stomach growled so loud it hurt. Funny, I've never tasted raw corn before. We thought we'd found our forever home, A charmingly renovated farmhouse with its original stone foundations still intact, nestled between wildflower meadows that swayed like something out of a dream. The realtor had gushed about the historic character, though she'd conveniently left out why the last owner sold after just 6 months. The first night, I jolted awake to find Lily, our 15-year-old, standing rigid at the bedroom window, her breath fogging the glass as she whispered, "They're singing in the stones," her voice far away, almost reverent. I chalked it up to her creative streak. She'd always been sensitive, prone to poetic whims. But then came the scratching, not the skitter of mice or the creak of settling wood, but something deliberate, rhythmic, like fingernails dragging over plaster in slow, purposeful strokes, etching words we wouldn't discover until morning, when we found the first message carved into the cellar door. "We're awake now." We started finding Lily in the cellar every night, her small frame silhouetted against the stone walls, fingers moving like spiders in the dark. At first it was just her name, Lily, 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 scratched haphazardly into the mortar. Then came the sentences, each in a different hand. "Help me" in delicate, spidery cursive. "SHE deserved IT in jagged, furious capitals." One morning, we discovered the back wall transformed, every inch gouged with "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." The letters so deep the plaster wept dust. Her fingernails split, encrusted with blood. She didn't even seem to feel it. The worst moment came when we finally confronted her. Mid-sentence, her voice dropped from its usual softness to a guttural growl. "You shouldn't have disturbed us." Her pupils swallowed the blue of her eyes, just for a heartbeat. Then she blinked, tilted her head, and asked if we had any cereal left, like she hadn't just spoken with a man's ruined voice. That's when I knew, whatever was in the cellar wasn't just in the house, it was in her. Lily wasn't Lily anymore. One moment she'd be our little girl, tears streaming down her face as she clawed at her own hair, begging us through sobs to get them out of my head. The next her spine would snap straight, her face twisting into something feral, and suddenly she was a grown man's fury trapped in a child's body, hurling chairs, shattering mirrors with her bare fists, screaming obscenities in voices that weren't hers. We found her journal filled with horror. One page a child's shaky account of Daddy's acts, the next a woman's elegant script describing the way the rope felt around his neck, and beneath that, in jagged ink-smeared letters, there in the walls, the Historical Society director finally cracked. I pried up the cellar's stone floor with a crowbar, the ancient mortar crumbling like dried blood, and the dirt beneath was blackened and reeking of copper, not the metallic tang of earth, but something fresher, hungrier. My shovel struck something soft, and when I pulled it free, clumps of hair came with it, long strands, matted with time but still clinging to shattered skulls, their fractures radiating out like spiderwebs from axe blows. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a haunting, some ghostly echo rattling the pipes. The house wasn't built over their grave. It was their grave, its stones stacked atop their butchered remains. And Lily, my Lily, wasn't being possessed. She was being taken apart, her mind hollowed out like a dollhouse, each of them moving in, arranging their trauma in her bones, her voice, her memories, until nothing of her was left but the mortar holding them together. Last night, Lily led me to the cellar with jerky, unnatural movements, like a marionette controlled by unseen hands, and the walls were smothered in fresh, overlapping scrawls, mine slashed over her childhood drawings in jagged, desperate strokes. Her smile stretched too wide, teeth gleaming like broken porcelain, as a chorus of voices, some sobbing, some snarling, rasped from her throat. "We only want what was taken from us." I gripped the sledgehammer, my tears turning the room into a blur, and faced the impossible choice: the stones or my daughter, the house or my family. With a scream, I swung. The foundation split with a shriek that sounded nothing like human pain, and something icy and alive surged up from the dirt like a breath held too long. Lily crumpled to the floor, lifeless. 3 days now, she's lain still as the doctors murmur about shock. But when I press my ear to her chest, there's no heartbeat, just a faint, relentless scratching, like fingers clawing their way out from the inside. I hadn't stepped foot on Black Meadow Farm in 20 years when Mom's stroke forced me back. The place smelled like damp rot and old hymns, the fields overgrown, the farmhouse sagging under the weight of secrets. That first night, I found Mom at the kitchen table, setting out 5 cracked porcelain plates for who? The guests, she whispered, her stroke-slurred voice suddenly precise. Behind her, the shadows in the corner thickened. I told myself it was the morphine. Then I heard the chairs scrape back from the table, one by one, no one there. Mom's quirks had rules: no shoes on after sunset, no mirrors facing west. Every night at 9 p.m., she'd limp to the back porch and scatter cornmeal in a perfect line across the threshold. For the runners, she'd say. I laughed until I woke to footprints, bare and skeletal, pacing that line at 3 a.m. Then came the sounds. Hooves on the roof, whispers in the chimney, something scratching at my bedroom door with what sounded like broken fingernails. Mom would just tilt her head and murmur, "They're testing you." One morning, I found her kneeling in the family cemetery, brushing dirt from a headless angel statue. "They're angry," she said, her voice suddenly her own. "I can't hold them much longer." I found Mom's journals in the attic, hidden under a floorboard stained black. Page after page of dates, names, and offerings. June 12, 1987, fed the well. October 31, 1992, hung the trespasser's coat in the oak. The last entry, written the day before her stroke, "They're hungry. They remember I'm old." That's when I understood. Our family weren't farmers, we were wardens. The graves weren't for relatives, they were for the ones we trapped here. And Mom wasn't setting places for guests. She was setting a table for guards. Mom lunged at me with the fire poker, her eyes glassy. "You left," she hissed in a voice like grinding stones. "The land needs blood to bind them." I ran to the cemetery, where the earth pulsed like a heartbeat. The headless angel's base had crumbled, revealing bones, dozens tangled like roots. Mom shuffled after me, her face flickering between terror and triumph. "Please," she begged in her own voice, tears cutting through the dirt on her cheeks. "The next keeper has to be chosen before I die. It's you or them." Behind her, the shadows in the trees took shape, tall, thin, smiling. I grabbed the rusted shovel by the angel. Mom's body jerked like a puppet, her arm raising the poker. "They'll make you love it." She wept. "They made me." The first shadow touched my wrist, cold, familiar. I swung the shovel at the angel, cracking its base open wider. The ground screamed. Mom collapsed as the shadows rushed into the fresh breach, their howls fading as the earth sealed itself. Now, Mom sleeps peacefully for the first time in months, but the cornmeal line needs renewing every night. The mirrors still tilt themselves westward, and this morning, I woke to find 3 plates set at the table. My hands smelled like soil. I don't remember doing it.